A university student who had just turned 21 mysteriously vanished from her dormitory. Police investigated every possible lead, yet found nothing. However, in the following few years, another 30 young women disappeared in the exact same manner. Where did they go? Where are they now? Police spent 10 years without uncovering a single clue, until a man who possessed good looks, education, and wealth appeared. Today, we recount the story of one of the most infamous serial killers in American history, Ted Bundy. Ted Robert Bundy was born on November 24, 1946, in a private hospital in Vermont. But from the moment he was born, he was living a lie. His mother, Louise Cowell, was only 22 at the time and became pregnant out of wedlock. In that conservative era, it was a tremendous scandal. So the family fabricated an elaborate lie. Bundy's grandparents posed as his parents, while his biological mother Louise pretended to be his sister. I'm sure many of you already know where this is going. Bundy lived within that lie for many years. He called his mother, sister, and his grandparents, mom and dad. It wasn't until he was 8 years old that he accidentally learned the truth from someone else. That same year, his mother Louise took him away from Vermont and moved to Tacoma, Washington. There, she met Johnny Bundy, an honest cook. They married, and Johnny adopted Ted, giving him his last name. On the surface, Bundy now had a complete family, but he never truly accepted his stepfather. Deep down, he saw himself as an illegitimate child, someone unwanted. In middle school, Bundy seemed like any ordinary kid. He had good grades and was fairly handsome. Though a bit introverted, his classmates thought he was completely normal. No one could see the darkness inside him. In 1965, at the age of 19, Bundy enrolled at the University of Washington to study psychology. This was when his astonishing charm began to show. He grew more handsome, more articulate, and quickly became a campus star. In 1967, Bundy met his first love, Stephanie Brooks, a beautiful young woman with long, middle-parted hair, from a wealthy California family. She was intelligent, elegant, and highly educated. Bundy fell madly in love with her, but Stephanie felt he lacked direction and ambition. In 1968, she broke up with him. The breakup devastated Bundy and planted in him a deep hatred toward women. Determined to win Stephanie back, Bundy set out to completely reinvent himself. He transferred to the University of Utah to study political science. Achieving excellent grades, he became active in politics and even worked for Republican candidates. In 1972, Bundy met Stephanie again. By then, he had transformed, handsome, charismatic, and successful. Stephanie fell in love with him once more, and they even began discussing marriage. But Bundy never intended to love her again. He only wanted revenge. In early 1973, he suddenly disappeared from her life, cutting all contact. He didn't love her, he simply wanted her to feel the pain of being abandoned. That same year, Bundy enrolled in the University of Washington School of Law. On the surface, he was the perfect law student, handsome, smart, charming. Even more unbelievable, he volunteered at a suicide crisis hotline in Seattle. Just imagine this scene. Late at night, someone calls saying they want to die, and on the other end of the line, Ted Bundy gently says, "Please don't give up. Life is precious. You must hold on." Yet the moment he hung up, he might have been planning how to kill his next victim. On the night of January 4, 1974, the University of Washington dormitory was quiet. Linda Healy, a 21-year-old psychology student with long, middle-parted hair and a cheerful personality, was asleep in her room. The next morning, her roommate woke up and noticed that Linda's bed hadn't been slept in. Her clothes were neatly folded in the wardrobe. Her wallet was there, but Linda was gone. Police scoured the entire campus and interviewed every possible witness, yet found no trace. Linda had vanished as if evaporated from the earth. They did not yet know that this was the first confirmed victim of one of the most notorious serial killers in American history. In the months that followed, several more female college students disappeared across Washington state. On January 31st, 19-year-old Donna Manson from Evergreen State College vanished on her way to a concert. On March 12, 18-year-old Susan Rincourt disappeared from her dorm at Central Washington State College. On April 17, 18-year-old Roberta Parks vanished from the University of Washington campus. Police began to realize this was no coincidence. All the missing girls shared similar traits: young, beautiful, long hair parted down the middle, and all were college students. On July 14, 1974, at Lake Sammamish State Park in Washington, it was a bright summer weekend. Many people were there vacationing, picnicking, swimming, relaxing. Around 1 p.m., 23-year-old Janice Ott was sunbathing on the grass by the lakeshore with friends. Chad GPT Da Noi. AOT is a student in the Probability and Statistics program at the University of Washington, smart, pretty, and well-liked by her classmates. At that moment, a handsome young man approached. His left arm was in a bandage. He looked injured, and his expression was full of pain. "Excuse me, can you do me a favor?" he asked in a gentle voice. "I can't get my sailboat off, could you help me move it? It's over by the parking lot." AOT, kind-hearted, immediately stood up and said, "Of course, no problem." She followed the man toward the parking lot. Her friends remained on the lawn, sunning themselves and waiting for her to come back, but she never returned. 4 hours later the same thing happened. 18-year-old Dennis Naslund also encountered the same injured-looking man and then disappeared. Witnesses later recalled that the man, who called himself Ted, drove a brown Volkswagen Beetle and looked harmless, yet it was this man who, in broad daylight and in full view of others, abducted 2 girls. By analyzing multiple cases, the police gradually pieced together the killer's modus operandi. First, he chose busy public places, university campuses, parks, shopping centers, where girls let their guard down and he could easily get close. Second, he always pretended to need help, most often acting as if his arm were injured and asking a girl to help move something into his car. Sometimes he even pretended to be a police officer or another authority figure. Third, he targeted a specific type of girl, around 20 years old. White, long hair with a center part, and attractive. These victims all shared a striking resemblance. Fourth, he always drove the same brown Volkswagen Beetle, a very ordinary car that aroused no suspicion. Most crucially, the man was extremely charming, handsome, polite, and soft-spoken, nothing like a dangerous person. It was this disguise that allowed him to approach victims so easily. Washington State Police realized they were dealing with an extremely clever and dangerous serial killer. They began using every means available to search for clues. From witness descriptions after the Sammamish Lake case, police obtained a fairly detailed portrait, a Caucasian male, 25 to 30 years old, about 1.8 meters tall, brown hair, handsome, driving a brown Volkswagen Beetle, claiming his name was Ted. From comparing the missing girls, police noted they all had long hair with a center part, clearly not a coincidence. Investigators also analyzed the locations of the crimes and concluded the killer was familiar with Washington State's geography and knew which places were suitable for his crimes. In September 1974, the police received a key phone call. A woman named Elizabeth Klopfer called and said her boyfriend, Ted Bundy, matched the police's wanted description. Klopfer said Bundy drove a Volkswagen Beetle and had recently been acting strangely, going out late at night and having plaster bandages in his car. What made her most suspicious was that Bundy had recently repainted his car, changing it from brown to blue. But Klopfer soon called back and said she might be overthinking it. She insisted Bundy was a good person who volunteered at a suicide hotline and couldn't possibly do such things. The police put Bundy on a list of persons of interest but took no further action. If the authorities had taken that lead more seriously at the time, the later tragedies might have been prevented. As Washington investigators closed in, Bundy decided to move on and continue his game elsewhere. In August 1975, he relocated to Salt Lake City, Utah. On the surface, Bundy said he was attending law school at the University of Utah. But in reality, he was hunting in a new territory. The Utah cases began quickly. On October 2, 1974, 16-year-old Nancy disappeared on her way home from school. On October 18, 17-year-old Melissa Smith vanished. On November 8, 17-year-old Laura Amy went missing. That same day, 17-year-old Deborah Kent also disappeared. These girls all shared the same characteristics and their disappearance locations were all in Utah. Police began to suspect that the Washington serial killer had moved to Utah. On the afternoon of November 8, 1974, 18-year-old Carol DaRonch had just come out of a clothing store and was preparing to drive home. As she sat in her car, someone tapped on the window. Outside stood a neatly dressed, polite, handsome young man. "Excuse me, I'm a police officer," he said, showing what looked like a police badge. "Someone tried to tamper with your car. Could you come with me to the station to give a statement?" DaRonch felt nervous but got into the man's car. It was a brown Volkswagen Beetle, ordinary enough. But she soon realized something was wrong. There was no police equipment in the car. No radio. Nothing. And the officer attempted to handcuff her. "You're not a cop." DaRonch screamed and fought back. "Shut up or I'll kill you," the man hissed, suddenly transformed into someone else. DaRonch struggled desperately and jumped out of the car at a red light. Stumbling toward the roadside, she ran away as the Volkswagen Beetle sped off into the night. DaRonch immediately called the police and provided a detailed description. This was the first time the authorities had received testimony from a surviving victim. Late at night on August 16, 1975, Utah Highway Patrol Officer Robert Hayward was on patrol when he noticed a Volkswagen Beetle slowly driving through a residential area with its headlights turned off. Finding it suspicious, Hayward switched on his police lights and signaled the driver to stop for inspection. Instead, the car suddenly sped up and tried to flee. After a brief chase, Hayward managed to stop the vehicle at a gas station. The driver was a polite, handsome young man who spoke softly. "My name is Ted Bundy," he said. "I didn't see your lights just now. Sorry about that." But inside the car, Hayward found some strange items: handcuffs, rope, a ski mask, a crowbar, and a bag of plaster. "What are these for?" Hayward asked. "Oh, those are just my moving tools," Bundy calmly explained. "The handcuffs are something I bought for fun. And the mask is for skiing." Although the explanation sounded somewhat reasonable, Hayward still arrested Bundy on suspicion of evasion. At the station, investigators realized that Bundy's car matched the witness descriptions perfectly, and his appearance closely resembled that of the suspect in multiple wanted bulletins. More importantly, Carol DaRonch identified Bundy without hesitation, stating that he was the fake police officer who had attempted to abduct her. In 1976, Bundy was indicted for the kidnapping of Carol DaRonch, his first major criminal charge. During the trial, Bundy displayed extreme confidence. He dismissed his lawyers and chose to represent himself. In court, dressed impeccably in a suit and behaving with elegance, he demonstrated an impressive grasp of legal knowledge. Many women in the audience were even charmed by him, convinced that such an intelligent and handsome man could not possibly be a serial killer. But evidence does not lie. DaRonch testified in court, saying she was 100% certain it was him, and the contents of Bundy's car were difficult to explain away. On June 30, 1976, the jury found Bundy guilty of kidnapping, but this was only the beginning. Prosecutors in Colorado were preparing to charge him with murder, and the evidence they had was far more substantial. If convicted, Bundy would face the death penalty. On June 7, 1977, Bundy appeared in court in Aspen, Colorado. It was a sunny day, and the courtroom windows were open. During recess, Bundy requested access to the law library to review materials. Because he had been behaving well, the deputies allowed it, and did not handcuff him. After spending some time in the library, Bundy approached a second-floor window while the guard was distracted. The drop was about 8 meters, with a parking lot below. Without hesitation, Bundy jumped. He landed cleanly, performed a near-perfect movement in midair, then stood up and casually walked out of the parking lot. The entire escape took less than 5 minutes. By the time the guards noticed, Bundy had vanished into the streets of Aspen. News of the escape caused national shock. A murder suspect had jumped out of a courthouse window and fled. It was unprecedented in U.S. judicial history. Bundy hid in the Colorado mountains for 6 days, with no money or food. He survived by stealing. He first stole a car, but it soon broke down. Then he stole another vehicle, only to get lost. The mountainous terrain of Colorado is notoriously confusing. Even locals get disoriented, let alone an outsider like Bundy. On the sixth day, he stole yet another car. But this time the owner quickly noticed and reported it. Police set up roadblocks, and when Bundy drove by, he was immediately recognized. Too exhausted to resist, he simply raised his hands and surrendered. 6 days on the run had drained him physically, and the mountain cold had become unbearable. After being recaptured, Bundy was imprisoned at Garfield County Jail in Colorado. Though old, the jail had strict security measures. However, Bundy soon discovered a weakness. He noticed that a metal plate on the ceiling of his cell appeared loose. He began plotting his next escape. He first went on a diet, reducing his weight from 80 kilograms to 70. Then, he began carving a hole in the ceiling. Every night, after the others were asleep, Bundy would work quietly, using metal objects from his cell to dig without making noise. After several weeks, he had created an opening just wide enough for a man to crawl through. Late at night on December 30th, 1977, Bundy climbed through the hole in the ceiling. He reached the roof of the jail and slid down a drainage pipe. Even more astonishingly, he didn't climb over any walls, he simply walked out the front door. He had stolen civilian clothes from the guards' quarters, changed into them, and strolled confidently out of the main entrance. The next morning, guards finally realized he was gone, but by then, Bundy was already on a bus to Denver. Knowing he couldn't stay in Colorado, Bundy traveled to Denver and bought a plane ticket to Chicago. From Chicago, he took a train to Florida. He chose Florida for a reason: warm weather, transient populations, and an easier place to disappear. In Tallahassee, he rented a cheap apartment. Chris Hagen, that was the name he used. He dyed his hair and grew a beard, looking like a completely different person. On the surface, Bundy tried to live a normal life. He even found a job doing odd construction work, but the urge to kill soon overpowered his reason. At 2:30 a.m. on January 15, 1978, inside the Chi Omega sorority house at Florida State University in Tallahassee, the girls were fast asleep. It was a 3-story building housing more than 40 female students. They believed they were safe. The dormitory had strict access control and outsiders were not allowed in. But they were wrong. A masked man quietly slipped into the house. He knew the layout and which rooms were occupied. In his hand, he carried an oak club along with other weapons. He first entered a room on the second floor where 21-year-old Margaret Bowman was fast asleep. Completely unaware that death had arrived, the intruder struck Bowman's head hard with the wooden club. She didn't even have time to scream before losing consciousness. He then strangled her with a pair of nylon stockings. Next was 20-year-old Lisa Levy in the adjacent room. She too was murdered in her sleep, but this time the killer went even further. He bit Levy's breast, leaving clear teeth marks. He then broke into 2 more rooms, attacking Karen Chandler and Kathy Kleiner. These 2 girls were more fortunate, although they suffered severe head injuries. They survived. The entire rampage lasted less than 15 minutes. By the time the other girls awoke to screams, the killer had vanished. The scene was horrific. Bowman and Levy lay in pools of blood, lifeless. Chandler and Kleiner were covered in blood but conscious. This crime became one of the most brutal campus attacks in Florida's history. 3 weeks after the Chi Omega murders, Bundy committed an even more shocking crime. On February 9, 1978, 12-year-old Kimberly Leach disappeared from her home in Lake City, Florida. 8 weeks later, her body was found in an abandoned pig shed 60 kilometers away. She had not only been murdered, she had been assaulted. She was the youngest victim in Bundy's killing spree. A 12-year-old girl, just beginning her life, had it stolen from her in the cruelest way. During his time in Florida, Bundy completely lost control. He killed recklessly and openly, as if on a final frenzy. Besides the Chi Omega and Leach cases, he attempted to abduct other girls. On February 8, he tried to kidnap 14-year-old Leslie Parmenter, but she escaped. On February 12, he tried again with another girl and failed once more. Bundy's behavior grew more erratic and careless. He began attacking in broad daylight, no longer cautious as before. Perhaps he knew his end was near and wanted to kill as many as possible. Or perhaps he had simply gone mad, entirely consumed by bloodlust. At 1 a.m. on February 15, 1978, in Pensacola, Florida, Bundy was aimlessly driving a stolen orange Volkswagen Beetle. He had stolen the car a few days earlier, and the owner had reported it missing. Officer David Lee was on night patrol when he spotted the Beetle and immediately became suspicious. He checked the license plate and confirmed the vehicle was stolen. Officer Lee switched on his lights and signaled for the car to stop, but Bundy sped up instead. A chase ensued. Bundy slammed the accelerator and raced through the streets. But his driving skills were no match for the officer, and the stolen Beetle was in poor condition. Within minutes, the Beetle stalled at a gas station. Bundy jumped out and tried to flee on foot. But Officer Lee quickly caught up and tackled him to the ground. This time, Bundy did not resist. Perhaps he knew his escape was finally over. Once Bundy was in custody, Florida investigators began gathering evidence. They knew this time they had to make the case airtight. The most crucial evidence came from the Chi Omega crime scene. Bite marks had been left on Lisa Levy's body, on her breast and buttocks, clear in both depth and shape. Forensic expert Dr. Richard Suvorin studied the bite marks and noticed distinctive dental features, uneven front teeth and a prominently protruding canine. Police asked Bundy to provide a dental impression, but he refused. A judge signed a warrant, forcing him to comply. On February 17, 1978, under police supervision, dental experts made a detailed mold of Bundy's teeth. Dr. Suvorin compared the mold with photographs of Levy's bite marks, and the result was shocking. They were a perfect match. Every detail of Bundy's teeth was present in the marks, the crooked incisors, the protruding canine, even a small chip. This became the first major case in U.S. legal history where dental evidence was used to secure a conviction. Police also found additional evidence at Bundy's residence. In his rented apartment, they discovered a membership list of the Chi Omega sorority, with the victims' room numbers clearly marked. Even more importantly, Bundy's whereabouts perfectly matched the timeline of the crimes. At the time of the Chi Omega attack, Bundy was living just a few blocks away from the sorority house. In the case of Kimberly Leach, the evidence was equally compelling. Witnesses reported seeing a man driving a white van in Lake City on the day of the crime. And Bundy had indeed stolen a white van during that period. More crucially, one of Leach's garments was found in an area Bundy frequently visited. And it contained Bundy's hair. On June 25, 1979, the trial of Ted Bundy for murder officially began at the Miami-Dade County Courthouse. It was dubbed the trial of the century. Television networks across the United States broadcast it live, and hundreds of journalists from around the world flocked to report on the case. The courtroom was packed, not only with journalists and legal professionals but also with many ordinary citizens. Shockingly, among them were numerous young women drawn to Bundy's so-called charm. Some even wrote him love letters. Bundy once again chose to defend himself. He dismissed his experienced defense attorneys and insisted on representing himself in court. Dressed sharply in a suit, he carried himself with elegance, displaying surprising legal knowledge and strong debating skills. "Ladies and gentlemen," Bundy said in his opening statement, "the prosecution wants you to believe I am a monster. But look at me. I'm just an ordinary young man, a law student. How could I possibly commit such brutal crimes?" Indeed, many people who saw him were confused. This polite, articulate, handsome man did not look like a serial killer at all. But evidence does not lie. Prosecutor Larry Simpson presented the facts one by one, testimony from dental experts, photos of bite marks on Lisa Levy's body, Bundy's dental mold, and other physical evidence. The most critical testimony came from Dr. Richard Suvorin, who explained that a person's teeth, like fingerprints, are completely unique. In addition to the dental evidence, the prosecution called multiple eyewitnesses. The Chi Omega sorority girls described that terrifying night. Survivors Karen Chandler and Kathy Kleiner, though their memories were fragmented, both confirmed seeing a masked man. Even more significant, law enforcement officers from several other states testified. Investigators from Washington, Utah, and Colorado detailed Bundy's crimes across different jurisdictions. Carol DeRanch also appeared in court. The brave young woman once again identified Bundy, declaring she could never have mistaken the man who tried to kidnap her. Despite the overwhelming evidence, Bundy maintained his innocence. He appeared confident in court, even joking with reporters, presenting himself as a wrongfully accused victim. But the jury did not see it that way. On the afternoon of July 23, 1979, the jury began deliberations. They needed to decide whether Bundy was guilty, and if so, what his sentence should be. 7 hours later, they returned to the courtroom. The room fell silent. Everyone awaited this historic verdict. Ultimately, Ted Bundy was sentenced to death. After being sentenced, Bundy was transferred to the death row unit at Florida State Prison, where he would spend the final 9 years of his life. During those 9 years, Bundy used every legal tactic available to delay his execution. He filed appeals, requested retrials, and sought any possible excuse to postpone his execution date. Meanwhile, Bundy became one of the most notorious criminals in the world. Journalists, authors, psychologists, and criminologists all sought to interview him and study his psyche. Bundy relished the attention. He gave hundreds of interviews, appeared on television programs, and even assisted the FBI in analyzing other serial killer cases. In 1984, Bundy married a woman named Carol Ann Boone, one of his most devoted admirers who firmly believed in his innocence. Even more shocking, in 1982, Boone gave birth to Bundy's daughter. Although intimate relations were strictly forbidden in prison, Bundy always found ways to bend the rules. During his years on death row, Bundy wrote countless letters and memoirs. He attempted to justify his actions by blaming childhood trauma, social environment, or even the influence of pornography. But Bundy never truly expressed remorse for his crimes. He only regretted being caught. On January 24, 1989, at 5 a.m., Ted Bundy was escorted from his death row cell to the execution chamber at Florida State Prison. It was a small room with an electric chair in the center. Bundy appeared calm, showing no signs of fear or regret. He wore a freshly pressed blue prison uniform, and his hair was neatly combed. Before the execution, the warden asked if he had any last words. Bundy said, "I would like to say to the families of the victims, please forgive me for the pain I have caused you. I also want to say to my family and friends, please remember the good side of me." But many believed his words were insincere. Bundy, even to the end, showed no real remorse. At 7 a.m., the execution began. Bundy was strapped to the electric chair, electrodes attached to his head and leg. When the switch was pulled, 2.000 volts of electricity surged through his body. At 7:16 a.m., the prison doctor pronounced Ted Bundy dead. One of the most infamous serial killers in American history had finally faced justice. Outside the prison, hundreds of people gathered to celebrate. They held signs reading, "Burn Bundy," and "Justice for the Victims," and some even set off fireworks as if celebrating a holiday. Though Bundy received the punishment he deserved, the innocent victims could never return. Alright, that's all for today's episode. I hope you'll leave a like and a comment. Thank you for your support. See you in the next one.